Thank you both for joining. Really appreciate it. I not always easy to tell a difficult story, so I appreciate you both coming out and sitting down to talk about. But before we get to it, Tim, why don't you tell us, and Rhonda, why don't you tell us what your life was like before October of 2022?
I've been the town constable now for 37 years and served warrants and papers. I retired 8 years ago as assistant fire chief for the city of Columbia. So I was really serving a lot of warrants and papers after I retired. And then keeping up with 5 grandkids.
5 grandkids. That's great. And you have how many kids?
2.
All right. Both of them have kids?
Yes.
Kept you both busy.
Yes.
How was life? Good?
Good.
Lots of traveling.
We love to cruise.
Cruise.
We will be in 28 days on our 65th cruise.
All right. Wow. Well, what happened in October 2022?
Well, first I went to my dermatologist, and she was going to try a new medication. And she said, "Have you had your flu shot?" "No, ma'am." "Well, go get one and come back in 2 weeks." I'll go home, go to Walgreens, and get a flu shot. Next week, we get on a cruise ship, having a ball. I'm doing good in the casino. And my right leg just goes Gumby every now and then, and I would fall. And then my face started tingling, and I said, "Rhonda, I think I'm having a stroke." And went to the infirmary on the boat. The doctor said, "You have the symptoms of a stroke. I do not have the medication or equipment. We're docked in Dominican Republic. This is the hospital where we send our crew members. So I'm going to send you by ambulance to this hospital." And they did. The doctor and one tech could speak English, everybody else Spanish. Checking in, they wanted passports and $5,000.
Just to go into the hospital?
Yeah.
They wanted $5,000.
When we were in the ER, they asked for $5,000 or credit card that they could put $5,000 on.
Okay. So you're in the ER, you're in the Dominican Republic. You should be on a cruise dancing and enjoying yourself, right? The whole idea of getting that flu shot was to protect you. But there you are, you're in the Dominican Republic in the hospital. So please, what happens next?
Well, I've always wanted to go back and hit this doctor in the mouth, but they would not let her stay at the hospital. She could visit twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
And what were your symptoms at this point?
By now, neither leg worked.
So you couldn't walk?
I couldn't stand up. I couldn't walk. So it was, Guillain-Barré was slowly progressing.
Yeah, but you didn't know what it was.
But
at this
I didn't
point.
know what it was.
And what they were telling you, it's a
stroke.
A stroke.
They're telling you you're having a stroke.
This doctor said, "I've done an MRI. You've had a stroke.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to keep you in ICU 30 days. I'll put you in step down 30 days. And then we'll talk about rehab."
So now how long were you at this hospital?
3 days.
3 days. So you decided you didn't want to stay there?
No.
Where'd you go?
The doctor said the only way I will release you is to a medical transport plane. Let Rhonda tell that part of the
both of our daughters are in the medical field, so we call them, we tell them kind of what's going on, and he told them, he said, "I want to come home. Get me out of here." So they get to working, talking to people, or they're actually talking at the hospital, and there's a text says, "I know a guy that's got a plane, and I know a pilot." So they started working on that and found some first responders that we know, and they flew over and picked us up on day 3.
So kind of like a makeshift medevac.
Yes.
Yes.
You kind of
Yes.
stitched one together.
Yes. And the doctor was really rude to me. They did have an office they called the international office. That's where people, because I did meet some other people that were on different cruises that had people sick there in the hospital that was trying to get them home. And anyway, he kept accusing me of trying to just put him on a plane. And I finally said, do you actually think I could get him on a plane by myself? He can't even walk.
Oh, he was accusing you of trying to get him on a commercial flight.
And he kept saying that.
And at this one, you couldn't even walk.
No.
So how is that going to happen? Okay.
And the morning that we were set to leave, I go in the office. I say, okay, I want to make sure I settle my bill. Let's make sure, because I'm ready to get out of there as soon as, they come get us. And he kept saying, no, we got to wait. I've been checking the airport and I don't see any medical flights. And I said, well, I assure you they're coming. So a few minutes later, I go back and he says, yeah, I see there is a private medical plane. So at that point, I think he was convinced that, we did have a medical plane or medical people coming to get us.
You did tell him you're adults, right?
Yeah.
And that you're going to make your own choices?
Right,
okay.
right.
While you were in the hospital in DR, so you're there for 3 days, he's saying you had a stroke. Okay. What treatment did they do, if any?
They hooked me up to an IV. When Rhonda asked what it was, she would get head medicine.
He said something, he'd say medicine for the brain.
Didn't tell you what it was?
And I asked him, I said, was it TPA? Because, I've been around medical, so I kind of know, there's a drug that they can give that if you're having a stroke, it kind of helps. And he had no clue what I was talking about. He just kept saying medicine for the brain.
Well, no clue. They did send paperwork with me on the ambulance back to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
That was all in Spanish.
Okay. So in a wheelchair to the airport?
On a cot. An ambulance when the guy...
On a cot. You were on your back.
Yes. When the plane landed, they had to get an ambulance to transport the 2 workers to the hospital, and they loaded him up on a cot, took him back to the airport in ambulance.
Were you in any pain at this point?
I do not remember.
You don't remember?
Those 3 days, I don't really remember a lot of.
At that point, he really wasn't complaining about pain. He was just numb. His legs were numb. And, he couldn't move them, couldn't feel them. His upper body was still okay.
Okay. So before we continue with the story, before this incident, were you active, sports, exercise, or you were serving warrants all day?
All day.
How many warrants you serve a week?
50.
50. A lot of running around?
Yeah.
Anybody ever chase you?
No.
Okay.
I might chase somebody. But...
I actually literally chase them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you chase them down and serve them with the papers?
There was about a 3-year period I worked with narcotics and vice.
Oh, boy.
I sold drugs, bought drugs. We done 3-4 search warrants a week. Had a blast.
This is in the Nashville area of Tennessee?
Below Nashville.
Below Nashville? What's the craziest story?
Yep. This is bad. We get information one night that this guy way, way out in the country, it's a federal park highway.
Okay. And then south of Nashville still?
Yes.
Okay.
We got information that this gentleman was getting in 50 pounds of marijuana. So me and my partner go set up on Natchez Trace in a field where we're looking right into the house. About 1 o'clock in the morning, the guy comes out of the house and disappears on the side. We don't know where he's went to. 2 minutes later, 5 coon dogs and bloodhounds are right there on us. And we're sort of up on a hill, so we're belly crawling backwards because the guy now's done come out there with a flashlight, but flashlight's going and we're down here. Well, I'm spraying these dogs with pepper spray. And we get sort of to the bottom, and I tell my partner, I go, look, I'm out of pepper spray. I'm going to have to shoot something. And I reach for my gun, and it's not there. And for some reason, the dogs left. We waited till sunrise and watched the people leave and went to where we were at. My gun was probably 100 feet to the right, and the pistol grip has dog teeth marks in it.
They're chewing up your gun. Oh.
So
the gun did save you at the end.
Yeah.
Just in a different way you expected.
But a couple weeks later, we got a search warrant to go to this house.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thinking is, a dog better not run at me.
Because you're ready.
And no.
Yep.
And we get there and they'd moved all the dogs.
Maybe they figured out you pepper sprayed them. Yeah, that stuff can be strong. They probably drag that into the house potentially. And so you were like crawling like military style on the ground, like the commando almost?
When the dogs were barking, we had another vehicle with police officers in it. And they said when I would key up and tell them what was going on, they could hear the dogs growling.
Oh, gee. Was that five of them? That's like a pack.
Yeah.
All right, going back to the transport. So, all right, you're getting loaded up on the plane, flown to, where'd you go?
First stop was Mar-a-Lago.
Seriously?
Seriously. Fueled up and went through customs there.
Okay.
And there sat this big, beautiful airplane.
Okay. Oh, Trump's plane? Okay. So you flew into West Palm Beach?
Yes.
All right. So you're flying, you're in West Palm Beach, you're refueling.
Yeah.
So we leave there and go to, we have a little regional airport, and that's where the plane was from.
Okay.
So we flew in there. I had buddies with an ambulance waiting on me. I get to
You got some good friends.
Get to Vanderbilt about midnight.
Okay.
And they have a team starting to work on me.
All right. And did they immediately diagnose you with something, or did they try to figure out what was wrong?
They were trying to figure out, and they finally decided it was GBS.
We about 3 days after we were at Vanderbilt, it took them about 3 days.
And then they said it's GBS Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Yes.
And did they tell you what caused it?
I got the neurologist way after the fact to put it in writing.
And he said what?
The flu shot.
All right. So 3 days in, they diagnosed you with GBS. What was that experience? I mean, did it come? Did it go? What was your life like at that point?
At that point, it was getting worse. By this time, my hands were curled up. I couldn't use my hands. And then they figured out my breathing was gone. So they had to put me on a respirator. I think I was on a respirator 42 days.
Well, they intubated.
You were intubated for 42 days?
Well, they intubated, and then they decided that it was really giving him, he was very agitated with the tube down his throat, trying to bite it. So they did the trach.
Okay.
They did a trach.
Put a opening through.
Yeah, he had the trach.
Still have the mark right there. Yeah.
And he wound up being paralyzed up to his neck. And
so for you guys know this, of course, but for anybody who doesn't know, Guillain-Barré syndrome is where your immune system, as you know, is attacking your nerve endings, starting usually in your extremities, just like it happened to you in your legs, traveling up. I mean, every case GBS I've ever seen is always from a vaccine. In your instance, a flu shot. And so, so now you're 6 days from the beginning of symptoms, right? 3 days in Dominican, 3 days US. They finally diagnosed you with GBS.
But by this time, my body hurts. It's hard to explain. If I laid in that hospital bed and there was a wrinkle on the sheet, it would just send the nerve pain.
Yeah, he was. We would have to pull the sheets to try to get the wrinkles out, or
just any little thing would just.
Like the gown, they had a hospital gown on him, and if it got under him, I mean, it would just drive him nuts. And he could still talk once they put the trach in. He could talk. He could. He could mouth, yeah, because he really couldn't talk. You couldn't hear like we're talking now. You'd have to read his lips.
So how long were you unable to, fully use your legs and walk?
Well, I was there 42 days, was transferred back to hometown to NHC rehab. I was still on ventilator when I went there. I was still curled up, not being able to move, use anything. And old-timey doctor that is the doctor for this place, he sees me and he goes, "You got GBS." He said, "I can tell by looking at you."
So how long before you were able to walk again?
Oh, he went home when he came home from the rehab center. It was March the 9th. He still could not walk or stand by himself. The upper strength in his body had came back. He had physical therapy and occupational therapy daily while he was in rehab.
So that's 7 months later you're talking.
And when he come home, what we would have to do is he could at that point kind of pull himself up some, set up with help. But we would have to put a board under him and slide him from the bed to the wheelchair to the couch or to the car. And he didn't actually start walking until he was using a 4-prong cane in September. The first part of September, he was able to walk.
So 11 months after getting the flu shot, you finally could start walking using a walker.
Yeah, a
cane.
walker.
Yeah, after I had a daughter get up in my face and say, "You're walking."
Who got in your face?
Morgan.
His daughter.
One of your daughters.
Yes.
She told you, "Dad, you're getting up and walking."
Yes.
Okay. You raise them and then they start pulling you around. What, did you experience pain during this period? Do you still experience any pain?
Yes. In my feet and ankles. As long as they're still, it's fine. But anytime I step or it moves or in a car and hit a bump, it's like little needles.
Still to this day. And how many years ago did you get the shot?
End of October of 22.
So
4 years.
So 4 years later, you're still experiencing pain, the result of getting the flu shot, which is...
And he still has no reflexes in his knees or ankles. And the neurologist at Vanderbilt has said he's probably plateaued, and
this is as good as
it's going to get.
But I'm walking. God has blessed me.
Amen. Absolutely. But the ordeal you went through, the 11 months where you couldn't walk, the rehab you had to go through, which I
hated.
It's probably incredible. And obviously, that's time that you weren't with your 5 grandkids and running with them, and you weren't chasing down, drug lords either. So, in retrospect, I assume, I'm guessing you never imagined, I assume, that getting a flu shot would result in your whole world basically going upside down.
25 years at the fire department, I took a flu shot every year, and they continued to offer them to the retirees. So that was probably my 30-something flu shot in a row.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's where the coin shot in the dark comes from. You just never know when is the one that's going to tip you. Like, why was it that 30-second flu shot caused your body's immune system to just start attacking your nerve endings?
There was a lady that I know that was in line beside me that got a flu shot. And they said she liked to went nuts.
She what?
Like to went nuts when she found out what had happened to me, wondering if it was going to
happen to her.
Now happened to her.
Did it?
It did not.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing you could say about vaccines is that they don't discriminate. I mean, they're very, very liberal in terms of, I don't mean that politically. I mean that in terms of, they don't discriminate. Doesn't matter what race, what religion, what geography, the cases that I've seen, you just don't know. I mean, it just seems to be, and I guess maybe they could if they properly did the studies to find out who's susceptible, but that work isn't done. So we were talking a bit earlier and you told me that you took IVIG treatment and that happened 3 days after you got to the U.S., right?
About 3 days, yes.
Well, I mean, I'm going to speculate that if you stayed in the Dominican Republic and you didn't get the IVIG,
I'd be dead.
We wouldn't be talking right now.
No.
And luckily as well,
before I left Vanderbilt, me and the doctor was talking one day, and he said, "Dude, there was 2 different days. I didn't know if you were going to live."
And had you not started the IVIG when you did, and a credit to the doctors of Vanderbilt that identified it as GBS,
yes,
treated it and gave you the right treatment, because had they not done that, even if they delayed maybe by even hours or a day, it wouldn't have worked out.
Yeah, and he had a lot of complications from, while he was there. He wound up having pneumonia. He had an ileus, which they weren't sure whether or not they were going to have to do surgery to get that unblocked. He had his sodium tanked out. He was in serious condition, and they were afraid all of his organs were going to shut down because his sodium had dropped so low. So there was a lot going on. He was one sick person.
So your friends, your family, they're like, oh my goodness, Tim's, been airlifted. Tim's in the hospital. Tim can't walk. Tim's in pain. Tim's still in pain. Tim can't live his life the way he did. When your friends, your family, and other folks in your circle asked you, well, how did that happen? What happened? What do you tell them?
Flu shot.
And what do they say when you say that to them?
Some will say, well, I don't know about taking the next one or not. And some will I'd say, I'll never do another one.
You mean other folks will say that?
Yeah.
So it makes some folks just question whether they should get one.
Right. And then some say,
I'm done.
I don't want
to get one.
And I'm one of those folks. I work at a hospital where they want you to have one, but if you don't, you just have to mask up. And I've not had one since, and I will never get another one because I saw what he went through. I mean,
has anybody, when you say it's a flu shot, expressed disbelief that the vaccine could have done that?
No.
Oh, really?
I've never had anybody. No.
Well, maybe you come off
not
as
the
an
right
honest
person.
What's that?
Maybe I hadn't talked to the right person.
Well,
yet.
no, that would be the wrong person. So you've been talking to the right people.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's unfortunately often, I guess it matters of community
And what I've told a lot of people, I would rather have the flu for 2 weeks than go through what I went through.
I think that probably almost everybody would agree with that.
Yeah.
Having the flu for 2 weeks or going through 11 months of rehabilitation just to be able to get back some basic life functions. I'm sure that's not what you expect to be doing when you're finally, you worked hard your whole life and you're now in cruise mode and hanging out with your 5 grandkids. Last thing you thought you were going to end up is paralyzed in a hospital.
Yeah.
I asked you, how did you end up filing a claim in the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program? Because my experience is most folks don't even know that program exists. Because, you guys probably know this already. You can't sue the manufacturer that makes that flu shot to actually hold them accountable. For example, did anybody warn you that you could have GBS?
No.
Did the doctor warn you?
You sign a little piece of paper.
That said what?
It says something about GBS.
It did?
No.
Yeah, it did.
I would be surprised.
No.
I mean, if it
That
did.
one didn't, I don't think. I think it's the shingle shot that might, but the flu shot doesn't.
No, the little form you fill out.
So the shingle shot, I would be more. I would not be surprised because the shingles vaccine is not covered by the immunity. So you can bring a claim for the single shot. So they want to cover themselves. But with the flu shot, they have the immunity. Shingles is an exception because the immunity only applies to routine vaccines, childhood vaccines, including if it's given to pregnant women. And then if it's covered for children or pregnant women, then it also is covered for adults. That's why flu shots, there's the immunity. But shingles is only given to adults. So there's no 1986 Act immunity. But in your situation, you ended up learning about the vaccine injury compensation program. How'd you learn about that?
She's on a Facebook page for Guillain-Barré syndrome, and I read something on there one day talking about this federal fund.
Mm.
So I Google vaccine attorney vaccine case or something.
Yep.
And y'all were up toward the top, and I got to reading and clicked on it and called. And
well, and one of the gentlemen at the hospital had also mentioned that there was lawsuits if it was caused by certain vaccinations. That kind of, we kind of put that on the back burner. Our main thing was to get him well, make sure he lives and walks again.
Who told you about that at the hospital?
It was just a guy when he went back to
Was it a doctor?
No. It was a tech or somebody that was helping him through the EMG. They did an EMG to test his nerves to see if it was Guillain-Barré. And that tech is the one that told him that there are lawsuits for vaccine cases.
Right. Wow.
Not
lawsuits
a
doctor.
But I mean,
is an interesting term for it. But yes, there are claims you can file in that federal program.
Right.
Absolutely. So what was your experience like in that program?
That federal magistrate took a long time.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate because you're giving up your right to a jury trial. You gave up your right to get actually pain and suffering damages to the real amount, and you capped it at $250. You gave up your right to discovery, to depose the company, get their documents. You gave up your right to hold the company that actually hurt you accountable. You gave up your right to only have to fight against the company's attorney, and instead you got to fight against the Department of Justice, who happen to have all our money because they take it whether we like it or not. And you gave up your right to even have an Article III judge, meaning in Article III of the Constitution, you got a special master. And give up all those rights, supposedly, so you can get speedy, just compensation. Let me ask you, sir, it's your experience that you got speedy compensation?
How long do you think it took?
It was a couple of years.
A couple
of
years.
So.
Yeah. Might have been quicker if you could just gone after the pharma company directly. Part of the reason, and you probably know this already, is that you have to wait a period of time typically before you can even bring a claim. Then you got to gather all your medical records, meaning you can't get discovery from the pharma company, but they get all your records, at least 3 years worth, everything, including if you went to the podiatrist, right? Well, maybe not the podiatrist, but pretty much everything. And then after you file it, you don't even hear back often from the other side, the DOJ, for like 9 to 12 months.
Huh.
There's no other situation I'm aware of where the other side gets that long. They got 30 days, 60 days, maybe an extra few weeks, and then they start the games with with the proffers and and so forth. And at this point, as you're 2 years in and you're like exhausted already. And that is the tactic. That is what they're trying to do, is to exhaust the petitioners as well as the petitioner's attorney so that you just finally go, fine, I'll just take it. And it unfortunately often works just because they know they're dealing with folks who are often suffering, and they want to spend their life with their grandkids now. They want to spend their life with their families, not fighting with the Department of Justice, who's got no stake in the game other than to fight you forever with all our money. Anyway, so you're saying your experience. You're saying they take a long time. Okay, yeah, they do. But took you 2 years, and they did eventually concede that you're entitled to compensation, right?
Correct.
And they compensated you.
Correct.
So, for yeah.
And I mean, the compensation's wonderful, but for what I saw him, the suffering, it doesn't touch it. I mean, we're very thrilled with what we got, but their limitations, they weren't there. They do not know that you have this healthy man that's never been sick, never took Tylenol hardly, asking for pain medicine. He is in such pain and can do nothing for himself. It was like an infant.
The statutory caps are unconscionable, immoral. Pick all the horrible adjectives you can want. I couldn't agree with you more. And not only are they unfair to you, they're unfair to everybody that might be injured because they do not provide a deterrent to the companies to make a better and safer product so folks don't have to suffer the way you suffered.
Right.
You just went in, did what the doctor said, and before you know it, well, we just went through it. And what incentive does the company that makes that product and profits to the tune of probably $1 billion, what incentive do they have to make a safer product?
None,
because they're not held accountable. And just the most troubling part is that when you think about it, it's when the company has to pay. That's when they change their conduct. Here, not only do they not have the company pay, they don't even give an incentive that makes the government, because the government's paying, really, taking tax money, big enough where the government even cares. Because that 250 cap, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I read the file.
Yeah.
I mean, in a regular court, 250 would be laughable as a cap on the pain and suffering. And it would be the amount that should be a deterrent. Worst part is the Department of Justice doesn't treat the 250 as in like, if you would have gotten, let's say, $3 million if you went to regular court, real court, it's not like, okay, well, you passed the 250. They're like, no, 250 is the worst possible scenario. And they use that as like the worst, most excruciating, most horrible pain and suffering ever. And then they work their way down from there, rather than saying, if you exceeded 250 in the normal circumstance. In your situation, you got pretty close to 250. At least that's some acknowledgement, but obviously not the same. In fact, you wrote something to the court. I don't know if you mind if I read it. Yeah. This was just a few sentences where you were describing in your own words what you experienced. And, I think any jury that read this would want to say to the company, hey, you need to do better. But obviously that's not going to happen here. Well, because you didn't get a chance to say this to a jury. You didn't get a chance to say this to an arbiter judge. But what you told this program was, during the worst of my illness, I experienced excruciating nerve pain that affected my entire body. This pain was constant and overwhelming, making even the most basic tasks impossible. At times, it felt as if someone was stabbing me with knives. I was unable to perform any bodily functions on my own. I could not eat, breathe, bathe, or even use the restroom without assistance. I felt completely helpless and dependent on others for even the most personal of needs. For months, I was unable to lift my arms to press a call light for help. The feelings of helplessness and fear I experienced was indescribable. I was extremely weak, both physically and emotionally, and I struggled to find any hope of improvement. This period of intense pain and loss of control was accompanied by deep anxiety and depression. The sense of fear that my condition might be permanent or worsen was constant, and it weighed heavily on me every day. For any other product, you get accountability. You get to hold the company accountable. You get a jury of your peers to make them understand they cannot do this to people.
But this would take federal legislation to change.
Well,
I think
it would take two things. It would need to be one of two ways. Federal legislation could do it, right? And, those 1,000 pharma lobbyists, they're no match for the zero vaccine safety lobbyists. Right. I said that being sarcastic. But yes, I don't see almost any potential that the National Child Vaccine Injury Act of 1986 will be repealed by Congress. There are a few brave members of Congress that do propose repealing it every year, and they get a few dozen folks in Congress on board, a number of congressmen that we represent, but they're never going to get the numbers, I think. There is another way to lift the immunity. Remember I was saying earlier, the immunity only applies if the vaccine is routinely recommended. Right? It has to be routine. It's a prerequisite to having the immunity. Well, the CDC just made flu shot, Hep B, Hep A, rotavirus, and meningococcal no longer routinely recommended. The flu shot is no longer routinely recommended. All that the Department of Health and Human Services has to do right now is take those 5 vaccines off the vaccine injury table. And once they've done that, they would no longer have the immunity. And you can start holding companies accountable. But they have not taken a single step to remove them from the table of injuries.
Maybe it will come. Probably not, but maybe.
I think justice comes at the end in one form or another. Sometimes not in this life, but I think it does come. I think that will hopefully come at some point. But here's the thing, what is going to help hasten the day for that? Folks to understand what these products can do. And I will say most folks who are injured by these products, they don't speak out. You were just living your life. You're not looking to do anything public you want to do with your grandkids.
Yes.
Chase down, criminals, right? Hang out.
Go cruising.
What's your favorite part of a cruise?
Alaska.
Oh, okay.
That's my favorite person.
That's your favorite one. My wife and kids, they watch that story of that woman that fell off the cruise ship. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I don't think she wants to go.
If you fall off a cruise ship, you're doing something really stupid or somebody pushed you. You ain't just going to just fall off.
I wouldn't think so, but I'm not so sure they're... Anyway, let's leave that aside. But you were just going on, living your life, not looking to, for any publicity. You had any negative thoughts about vaccines before this incident?
Not really.
Idea even crossed your mind there could be a problem with the vaccine?
Oh.
What's the only thing you'd heard about vaccines, or what are the things you heard about them?
We took the COVID vaccines because that was the only way the cruise ship would let you cruise.
Okay.
But we had never heard, if you take this could harm you.
Now, all right. How many times do you think you heard the word safe and effective before you took the flu shot about vaccines?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, all the time.
A lot?
Yeah. Whole life.
Well,
children.
Hundreds? Dozens? Yeah. How many times did you heard the words GBS or Guillain-Barré syndrome before you took the flu shot?
Never.
Never.
Not once.
Never.
Yeah,
Never heard of it.
I mean, you already know our firm has a lot of these cases. Most folks don't, like I said, want to sit down and talk about it because they just want to live their life. And they also don't want the potential backlash about saying anything negative about a vaccine that could, from speaking out. With that said, I do think that what will hasten the day is folks who do speak out, like you guys are doing and bravely doing it. You don't have to do here. You don't have to be sitting here and talking about your experience, sharing it with the world. I know it's personal. I'm sure it wasn't easy to do that. But I think that more than Congress, it will be folks understanding. And I think everybody that watches this will now see in real life, a real world experience of, what can happen after vaccination.
Yes.
And that could help bring change. People start thinking more about these products and stop believing. Probably heard me say that if you ever watched anything I said anywhere. So, is there anything else you'd like to share with anybody that might watch this podcast?
No, I mean, we are very blessed that he is as well as he is, because we have read, like he said, we belong or follow some other GBS patients that have not been so lucky. Some of them still can't walk. Some of them still, paralyzed their life. His is still changed forever because he still lives in pain daily. But he's able to function somewhat as normal as possible. There are others that can't. They never will be able to.
Yeah, we represent some of those folks, sadly, and they're devastating, especially because it just comes out of nowhere.
Yes,
You're just like, they're handing out these products like they're candy, and until the one shot that just tips somebody over the edge. And it's one thing if you knowingly take that risk. We all take risks in life. We all know to take a risk when we get in a car, but we know the risks. And we choose to, like, I'm not so sure I want to drive around a 1940, vehicle of any kind, right? But, when it comes to this, the risks they're just not told. They're not disclosed. And true to what you've already told me. Well, I really appreciate you both coming down, sitting down and talking with me, and sharing your story.
we
I hope
appreciate
somebody
you.
will get something out of it.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure they will. I'm sure anybody who watches this will. You guys are putting a family, a face to what can happen after a vaccine. It's one thing to know about it in the abstract. It's another thing to actually listen to folks tell their story. Everybody can relate to being on a cruise ship. Everybody can relate to at least the idea of being stuck in a hospital in the Dominican Republic.
If you get sick on a cruise ship, wait till you get back out into the ocean and let them call the Coast Guard.
Well, there you have it,
Don't
folks.
go to the hospital in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah. Well, and also, if maybe you also one thing to consider is if you're going to get a flu shot, if you're going to get one, time it so that you're not going to be on a cruise ship
home for a while.
that period of time that GBS or transverse myelitis or those other neurological issues
could
come
kick
up.
in, yeah.
That's another thing to consider. Dr. Sorowski was here on the last episode, who's a neurologist, and anybody who watched, you told me you had seen that, and his story was incredible. I mean, here he is, another brave doctor speaking out. Hope that he doesn't face serious repercussions for doing that. But as he described it, his very first day on his residency, the first day, he sees a case of GBS from a vaccine. And he said, as he explains, he's like, I went home that day thinking like, wow, what are the odds on my first day, this crazy rare thing they teach you in med school. And then he saw one a week later. Right. And then he said he kept seeing them. And as he described on the last podcast, He said within the neurological departments at the hospital where he works and in the other ones that they all know. They all seen the repeated neurological injuries from vaccines. And when we say GBS, what are we really talking about? We're just talking about your immune system attacking the nerves in your extremities, often your legs, and then traveling up. That's what it is. Your immune system attacking your nerves. Just keep it simple. Where transverse myelitis, another fancy term, really just means that starts instead of your extremities, your immune system attacking starts in your spinal column. Or when we say encephalitis after vaccination, that just means your immune system is causing brain swelling. So it's starting here versus in your legs. I mean, they all sound like fancy terms, GBS, transverse myelitis, but they all mean the same thing. It means your immune system is attacking your nerve endings. There's a lot of folks who just look at you like you're crazy when you're like telling you that vaccines can cause neurological harm. And they're like, it's like you just said, I don't know, aliens just ate my lunch or something. And that's what I mean by the fact that you're sitting here and talking about it and folks can hear you and hear your story. They can get a real world example of this. And it happens all the time, as is plain from Dr. Soronsky's story. It's not rare. Whether it gets identified as vaccine injury is first of all one thing. The fact that you ended up somebody telling you.
Most doctors probably wouldn't have told me that.
They would not. And I know that from experience. They would not have told you that. And also, even after somebody is told that, not later by somebody else that's not their doctor, they don't synthesize it. They're like, anti-vaxxer, whatever.
Yeah.
So, the good news is everybody knows you have a gun. So, and that you can make your way on hands and knees, and you have no problem shooting the 5 dogs. So I'm not too worried about anybody giving you a hard time for this podcast. So
just hope it helps someone else.
Me too. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.